Time to take a look at what's making the headlines in the papers in our news review. Please say we're joined by Jamie Klingler, co-founder of Reclaim These Streets. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in on a Tuesday morning. You and I were just discussing the papers today are kind of a bit of a one-trick pony, aren't they? Slightly. I'm sure their editors would say there's more than one story in town. But there is only really one story in town.
Yeah, so the coup that never was. And it's trying to figure out who's in the position to take over, who's not, how did the speech go last night with Keir Starmer saying, I've won every fight I've ever been in, and coming out very strong. So they're saying that his life is saved as a PM for right now, but what's going to happen after that? And I think, for me, the infighting and that becoming the first 10 pages of every paper instead of the meat of the Epstein scandal, which is actually about the victims and the trafficking of children. And a lot of the language around it is like an email scandal. This Deadline yesterday said racy emails. It's not racy emails when we're talking about children being taken and used in this way. And I think the actual scandal of what's happened to those girls, it's so hard to comprehend that we then make it about something else, make it about shuffling papers. And Dan Rather last night, the newscaster from America, wrote about how at least England is doing something about it. At least there's some sort of accountability happening, which isn't happening in America.
Yes, and it's interesting the way this original story then percolates in different ways in different countries as well. I was talking to a friend who works for a broadcaster in the Middle East, and we're barely talking about it. The story just doesn't make headlines there at all. In the UK, paper after paper, they've gone down the angle, the resultant angle, to your point, of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and the allegations against him, or the situation, the furore around Epstein and the relationship he had with Peter Mandelson. But, you know, the Prime Minister, to your point, said this should all be kind of victim-centric. And you don't really see an awful lot of that at the moment.
Right, and on the 11th, excuse me, on the 11th, they will be doing in Congress the victims talking about how badly it's been handled. And like the redactions, they redacted all of these powerful men's names, but not these victims' names. There's a newscaster, Aaron Parnas in America, who wrote, you're actually spreading child sexual abuse images by spreading the Epstein files that were not redacted correctly. And so when we think about that and we think about that the Department of Justice has just blown it entirely. That'll be discussed in Congress this week. But locally, what the fallout is in terms of the ever going cabinet disarray.
Yeah, and that was, you know, yesterday morning at kind of 10 o'clock, we're talking about another departure from the top team behind Sir Keir, and then it's the vultures circling, and then all of a sudden you get these reports of these cheers and applause and table thumping at that Parliamentary Labour Party meeting. Normally, the press can kind of get their ear up against the door. This time, there was 2 security guards that were keeping them away so they couldn't hear what Sir Keir was saying. They couldn't hear the detail of what was being decided and discussed.
The chaos, though, like, we've had so many years of so many prime ministers. Prime ministers used to be in for 15 years, and now we've had 7 in the last, what? My math is bad.
Very near future, for sure, yeah. And you know, you look at page 4 and 5 of the Times, and this is the challenge that was kind of presenting itself with, is that, you know, there is no clear successor. And so that's really the only reason some might say that Sir Keir's had that reprieve for
they don't know who to put in.
An indeterminate amount of time.
And then they're saying Angela Rayner's site was up, but and then she's saying that was a fake site for leadership bids. So there's so much rumor and conjecture that, again, it doesn't go back to the victims and the children and the girls that were used in such a horrible way that we're not dealing with. And it's the layers of it that I think people really struggle to think about child sexual trafficking, that the layers of it makes it a lot easier to talk about political infighting.
And the infighting that comes so further down the line of all of this as well. And, you know, and it's, you know, it's important to say that there are a trove of data that still probably hasn't been got through as well.
Yeah, and that's what's so upsetting. My friend Wendy Wason was saying that you need to be over 18 to read the Epstein files, but only 8 to be featured in them. And I think that was very, very important.
Yeah. And you know, we heard those comments from the royal family over the last couple of hours saying that the King stands ready to support any investigation. Obviously, the allegations into people like Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's denied any wrongdoing. You know, Peter Mandelson's denied any wrongdoing as well, but they've both also expressed the regret of those relationships.
But also, if we believed women 15 years ago, where would we be? Like, all of this has taken so long to actually just believe the victims. And I think about Virginia Giuffre all the time, and she's no longer with us, but her bravery and what she brought to the table, and her book, Nobody's Girl, should definitely be read.
And having interviewed her siblings and her family, extended family, the remarkable strength that they have shown and continue to show, despite it being so public. Absolutely so public. Let's move on, shall we, to The Guardian, page 19. What have you got?
So, this is a great one. This is Greg Reed from Places for People about a garden town that was planning to build 10,000 new homes. The planning went through actually 20 years ago when his son was just being born, so he can really put a top and tail on it. But it's a village where they will have the schools right near the village and the pharmacies and the pubs, and kind of going back to a place where you don't necessarily need a car. And so that holistic part of People for Places is getting housing for lower income people that actually works for them and works for the communities, rather than putting people in housing that's not suitable, that's got mold, that's got all of these things. And I think it's really interesting, though, that the red tape, again, takes so long to get through, that he's been waiting 20 years for this village to just get built.
And you see quite a lot of discourse, I don't know about you see quite a lot of discourse about the idea of 15-minute cities on social media, and the idea that people don't like to potentially kind of to have what they would maybe see as their freedoms limited and kind of their ability to travel limited, but at the same time, I think everyone will quite like everything on their doorstep as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because coming from the States, you drive to the movie theater, you drive everywhere where my parents are. And here, I'm in Camden, so I'm in less than a 15-minute city, and I've got dogs, and using that little community, I know everyone. I know all the dog walkers in my neighborhood, and that's made London really small and really home for me. So I see the importance of it, especially when you have kids and you're trying to cut down carbon emissions, and you don't want to drive everywhere, and you want your kids to be able to play with their friends and go back to a calmer time where it wasn't like, oh, we have to arrange a play date 6 weeks in advance.
I made a documentary years ago now about traffic and traffic jams. Stick with me. And we went to Copenhagen because, you know, there isn't really the concept of traffic jams and traffic there. And the urban town planner said, look, the only way really to tackle traffic is to either make it so hard to drive around a city that people don't want to do it and take alternative forms of transport, or so expensive to drive around a city that people don't want to do it and take alternative forms of transport. And it's like you really got to kind of bite that bitter pill to try and change the environment. But then you also have now in 2025 and 2026 that challenge of a lot of politics and a lot of political commentators.
And the schemes and congestion charges.
Who are kind of poo-pooing on environmental policies and kind of saying, well, let's get back to gas guzzling, let's drill, baby, drill, Donald Trump, etc. And so you have these dream realities of clean, efficient working cities, but then this narrative that doesn't support that either, and there's this kind of conflict between the two.
And there's conflicts between suburbia and urban areas, and then your next story is about the rain, because again, the amount of going out in that when you don't have a car, and going out in torrential rain when we've had rain for 40 days. You know, it's that type of thing that public transport becomes harder to use when there's inclement weather. So again, it all kind of comes together in terms of how much does your life get limited? The hours of sunlight here. Like when you...
Which hours?
We're almost out. We're almost out. Mid-February.
I always thought I did quite a good job of segueing between stories, but I think you've beaten me to it. Absolutely. This is page 13 of The Guardian. Rainfall records broken as the winter deluge stretches to 40 days. Parts of Devon, Cornwall and Worcestershire have been dodging deluges or showers for 40 days, the same number as the Noah's Ark bobbed around for, and the same number of days you can expect sogginess if it rains on St. Swithin's Day. And it just, you know, they're referencing here kind of farmers who are struggling, referencing other kind of sectors and industries that are struggling, heavy rain leading to sewage problems on beaches and inland swimming groups that are around the country that would normally jump into the waters can't do so. It has been brutally wet.
It's been brutally wet, and just the amount of mud and the amount of what's like... I've got muddy dogs every day, and just dealing with them not wanting to go outside and me not wanting to go outside, and just everyone's attitudes, and everyone's just sick of it and ready for the sun.
There's Met Office figures for February up to just gone, so 2 days ago. The UK has already had 37% of the average rainfall for the month. England has had 59% of its average rainfall for the month, but a sorry shout out to Aberdeen. So up until Sunday, it had had 180% of its February average's worth of rainfall.
God.
And actually, if you now look at kind of the Cairngorm mountain range, because that amount of moisture is hitting the upland areas, the snowfall means that the ski resort isn't able to operate currently because there is so much snow. There's some pictures being posted online of the kind of the ski lifts, and the snow is only about a foot or two beneath the top of the lifts.
Sounds fun.
It sounds fun, but you kind of then think kind of the perverse nature of the situation that actually it's too wintry for a winter sports company to operate, and then there's an impact on their business and all of the kind of the locals that will be supported by it. And then just the emotional aspect.
I know, the seasonal, what is it, seasonal disorder?
Affective disorder, yeah. It's a tricky time to kind of
come in at 4 a.m. and do the news?
Well, you know, that is a pleasure. The range makes it 1% more tricky. Let's move on, shall we, to page 3 of the Eye. And this is...
Marvin Humes?
Yes, go for it.
So Marvin Humes was the Masked Singer, and I watched yesterday as his children saw him be unmasked, and his youngest just cried. They were watching it, and they were like, oh, it's going to be somebody from JLS. It's going to be somebody. And they had watched the whole series next to their mom and dad, not realizing it was their dad. And just the beauty of that and the beauty of his kids being like, oh, my God, I have to tell my teacher, was just a sweet moment in between all of the chaos of everything else.
And that's the kind of thing that, you know, the Winter Olympics offers as well, I kind of feel. You know, 2026 has been particularly brutal, it feels, from the outset, you know. The incident with Nicolas Maduro on the 3rd of January feels like a very long time ago already. The incidents of geopolitics and everything that's gone around it feels quite overwhelming at times, I'm sure, for many people. But there are still these moments of levity. Do you think that perhaps we slightly forget those moments of levity and they get drowned out and overlooked?
I think you get used to the doom scrolling. So when you see something cute, you hit share, but you don't necessarily absorb it. So actually watching that and watching his kids say, oh my God, I have to go in and tell my teacher. And the joy of a 5-year-old saying, I've got to tell my teacher that my daddy was the Masked Singer. And watching the dancing flower pots or watching the dancing grass at the Super Bowl. So it's those type of things that I think we do have to hold on to, but I think we can't bury our head in the sands when so much has happened this year and the state of democracy right now is quite in jeopardy.
No, not at all. And that's why, you know, you kind of slightly struggle to find other stories in the papers today, don't you? See the previous discussion. But I also wonder whether that's actually why stories like the Beckham family drama resonated so widely, because a lot of people went, oh, that's a story that I recognise.
And the Coldplay Kiss Cam, like that was the biggest global story for weeks and weeks because it was a quick moment that everybody could be like, oh my God, I'd be so humiliated if that was me. And everybody was on the same page with. I think so much political divide is polarizing people so that you end up being worried about, are you going to offend anybody? Whereas if you're talking about the rain, as we just said.
And then you also kind of factor in the interesting bit that's in court currently in Los Angeles, in California as well, about kind of whether social media is designed to be addictive, and that's being tested in the courts at the moment. And Mark Zuckerberg, I think, expected to testify maybe next week. But you know, we know that the algorithm promotes the negativity in life. We know it promotes the division and the discourse and the you know, the political kind of chaos.
And that's where, like, as an American, watching the Super Bowl and watching Bad Bunny talk about love and love is love and talk about what community looks like. One of my favorite parts of the Super Bowl halftime show was there was a little kid sleeping that an abuela picks up and takes out. And that kind of beauty really talks about the family community nature, and those are the things that'll make you laugh and be like, oh yeah, that was always you when you were 5 years old. You were getting carried out of every party because you wanted to dance on the dance floor, but you fell asleep on the dance floor. So I think those type of things do bring us together globally.
One thing that does not bring people together
is an ASBO?
Is an ASBO, featured on page 25 of the Daily Express. This is a rural resident that has been... this is my animal and finally story, has been threatened with an ASBO to stop her cockerel from crowing. Colonel's dawn choruses have been going on for several weeks, and he could be seized by the police. It's a small village on the Norfolk-Suffolk border. I've been threatened with an ASBO is insanity, according to Sue Farthing. It's out of proportion for the situation, sets a bad precedent for the future of the countryside. Began keeping chickens 18 months ago, didn't realise that Colonel was a cockerel until he began crowing a few months later. and he's been told that he has to stay quiet until 8 a.m, according to Norfolk Council.
So I want to know who in Norfolk Council was given the job of going out and giving a cockerel an ASBO.
Well, the threat of, as yet, he's innocent until proven guilty, is Colonel. But is his name. Apparently it's because of a complaint by a neighbour, but Sue doesn't know who the neighbour is, but she does now have to put Colonel in a coop overnight with blackout blinds on the windows to try and reduce his proclivity to do what comes naturally.
Is this going to be a Netflix movie in 4 years' time?
It potentially might be. She also was sent complaints about antisocial behaviour from the council. But it's that kind of challenge back to community, isn't it? And what is community? And what's established community? What are newcomers to community? Where does community kind of rub against each other at times? You know, I used to live in a village and we had more than one cockerel, but I never had any complaints. But it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone gets along harmoniously.
No, and this is where they move the lines of your property, and you get neighbours that are torching each other's cars because they've parked on their lawn for 6 months or whatever. I do think that we all just need to take a deep breath a little bit. And an ASBO for a cockerel is quite a stretch.
It is quite a stretch, although I'm pretty sure that story has a bit of a kind of circular nature. I think it comes round time and time again every about 3 years. There's another village, another cockerel, another colonel. We will see that in headlines in due course. We'll see plenty more of the day's stories, including all the stuff we've talked about. Good to have you with us as well. Good to have you with us here on, on that camera, on Mornings. You're going to have plenty more with Sophie and Wilf coming up after the break. Don't forget to download Cheat Sheet as well, our Mornings podcast. Good to have you with us. Thank you.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?